The same area in 2005 shows this grading bar such as bar 8, which has come up over 25 feet and is much more dense in vegetation. Bar 9 has grown considerably, almost doubling in size and removing bank from the east side by erosion. During this time, you can also see agricultural lands with meander scars of the old channel, the former wide shallow channel. Now that the channel is filling and less able to carry a coarse sediment load, it wants to become a wide shallow channel. Now a scenario is modeled showing a flood in this constricted area. Bar 8's become a bedload constriction. You can see the trees of vegetation sticking out of the top. The channel has become split, but most importantly, there's a constriction that only allows so much floodwater and sediment to move. Thus, sediment begins to deposit and fill the channel. This occurs during one large flood, such as the 1995 flood. It's important to know that the conditions prior to 95 flood are changed considerably now. With flooding expanding out of the channel and into the floodplain, there becomes a feedback loop where the constriction is unable to move bedload, it piles up more sediment. Water finds a freer path along the east side of the river channel over the floodplain, and it has a lot of erosive force. It starts scouring through the soils and eroding the land down, bypassing the constriction. What eventually happens is most of the floodwater ends up out in the floodplain and out of the channel. After our conceptual flood has occurred, the result is that there's a new channel around in the flooded area in the floodplain, and the soils and the farmland has been completely removed by erosion. This is the process by which the channel is reclaiming its former wide and shallow self. It's called an avulsion. This would occur during one flood, say the size of the 1995 flood, which was about a 30-year flood event. That has a great chance of occurring in a 10-year period and is about to happen. This sequence of aerial photographs of Bar 8, taken from 1987 to 2002, shows the visual changes in vegetation cover occurring while the bar graded 25 feet. As you can see in the far left panel, the river is low to the low water channel. The bar is low, and you can see ponds of water in places. The middle photograph shows vegetation starting to grow in 2002, and then by 2006, there are trees over 20 feet occurring on the bar, where once it was 25 feet lower. The effect of sediment filling the channel and vegetation growth has been to reduce channel flood capacity dramatically. 6 feet of channel capacity has been lost during a 100-year event around the Highway 101 bridge at the upstream end of the Middle Reach. This reduces the volume of water that the channel could carry, so it comes out of bank sooner, a 10-year flood instead of a 100-year flood. Also, the ability of the river to move coarse sediment has been reduced dramatically, so more deposition occurs, further causing more problems. Besides loss of flood capacity, another effect of channel filling with sediment and vegetation is that point bars have developed, particularly at Bar 9 where the outside bank and east bank is not protected. This area has eroded 10 acres of prime, mature riparian vegetation, and now the eroding bank is dangerously close to vineyard land. Now the landowner will face a difficult choice of spending literally millions of dollars to try to protect his bank or give up land to the river. This is a very difficult choice that will be faced by many landowners along the river. There is a way, however, to manage sediment, and this was demonstrated in Middle Reach in 2002 and 2007 when two bars, one near Healdsburg called Bar 2 and one downstream called Bar 13, were skimmed. Approximately 500,000 tons of material was removed from both of these bars in 2002 and 2006, and they both replenished and came right back to where they were before the skimming. These cross-sections shows Bar 13 coming up an average of 10 to 12 feet. This is one way to manage sediment in a reach. Bar number 2 up near Healdsburg was also skimmed in 2002 and 2006. Both times, the bar fully recovered. Skimming the bar also increases flood capacity at this reach and reduces the frequency of flooding in the neighborhoods that are adjacent to the river. Also, habitat for fish was monitored in detail, and riffles and pools were not affected at all by these episodes of skimming at Bar 2 or Bar 13. So we have a way to manage sediment that's sustainable, using gravel extraction. Another tool to be talked about later is actually using the natural sedimentation of the river to fill old gravel pits and to make habitat. This sequence of the Pasalacqua pit, located in the lower Middle Reach, shows a pond in 1986 from which over 500,000 yards of material was removed. Since that time, this area has filled and become a valuable wetland then riparian forest. This can be done by lowering the banks to the river to allow fine sediment deposition in the gravel pits. In conclusion, the Russian River in the Middle Reach is not a sustainable situation. The straight deep channel is changing by filling and vegetation increases to become the wide shallow channel it once was. This is totally incompatible with land use on the valley floor. Agricultural land will be lost if this is allowed to continue. There are solutions of skimming gravel bars and removing sediment in an environmentally safe manner that will help maintain channel flood capacity and prevent a catastrophe from affecting the important wine industry in Sonoma County. This video describes the Russian River in the Alexander Valley, its history, and land use effects. It also discusses flood protection and erosion control, which through time has been accomplished by channelizing the river. The river was originally wide and shallow and took up most of the valley floor, and since that time, land has been reclaimed to agriculture. The river channel is deeper and straighter than natural, but it's starting to fill up with sediment and vegetation, and beginning to turn back to its old self, which is a great conflict for landowners. The Alexander Valley, like the Middle Reach, is an enclosed basin. The upstream end, near Cloverdale, comes out of a canyon and emerges into a wide flat area of the valley floor. It's constricted at the downstream end near Jimtown, where, during large floods, a backwater pool forms. This means that more sediment can come into the Alexander Valley than can leave. Thus, the original channel form, which reflected this condition, shows a wide, shallow channel with multiple gravel bars and channels and off-channel areas. This diagram shows the results of computer modeling of floods in the river. The top diagram shows a water surface in blue and the ground in black. You can see a break in the water surface slope as it flattens out when it comes to the backwater area. This means that coarse sediment moving along the river cannot go any further and is deposited, and this happens at the large bars near the old DeWitt operation, designated in the lower diagram as bars SD, S4 and SD5. This means gravel will accumulate. The valley floor of the Alexander Valley had been converted to agriculture by the late 1800s, as shown in this 1898 postcard looking across the valley to the northeast. The land along the river had been straightened, deepened, and filled, and the river confined to a deep, narrow area in the middle of the valley. This provided some flood protection, but occasionally the river comes out of bank. So over the years, this process of filling the floodplain land and straightening the rivers, called reclamation, has provided flood protection for the landowners in the This map, drawn in 1877, shows the Russian River going from the north area on the upper left to the lower right to the south. You can see the rivers in dense lines, and it shows islands. This is significant because it indicates that the river was overloaded with sediment and had braided channels. This is consistent with the sediment supply, which is high, and with the hydraulics of the valley, which have a backwater area at the downstream end near Jimtown Bridge. This is a unique situation where gravels will accumulate. Another map, drawn in 1898, shows a similar river. You see a wide river with islands, gravel bars, but you can also see all of the agricultural land and roads that have been installed, including the Geyserville Bridge and the Jimtown Bridge. The area in the lower valley was subject to flooding once every 5 years on average. The upper land depended upon how much capacity had been obtained. In any event, the landowners along the Russian River were always subject to erosion and flooding and stripping of their soils.